Jay Powell and the central bankers are going to deny as long as possible that there's no stagflation, but we know there is, and even President Trump called for rate cuts yesterday, so it's not going to be pretty. Thursday, March 20th, 2025, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So today we're going to look at how precious metals love the smell of stagflation in the morning. Yes, that's a reference to Apocalypse Now and the line about I love the smell of napalm in the morning. We're going to look at what Jay Powell said yesterday at the FOMC and what the Fed is looking at. And we're going to look at some charts of gold, silver, GDX, GDXJ, copper. Everything's looking really interesting. And again, it's not financial advice. It's what I see going forward. And it's up to you to decide what to do and do your due diligence and research. And I'm going to be doing something a little different today. At the end of towards the end of this video, I'm going to talk about the JFK files briefly about what's going on and my opinion. I mean, it's 80,000 files, so I'm sure with AI, it's a lot easier to go through it. It would have taken a lot longer without it. But I'm going to recommend a book as well to do with what's going on, in my opinion, with the JFK files and the deep state. Unfortunately, it's a book that's very hard to get and expensive, but nevertheless, I feel it's important to tell you about it. So, back to stagflation. And I've been warning about this for the last few years. Yes, we had a run up in inflation or prices back in 2022, 2023. We got up to almost double digits in the US. In the UK, the CPI was like 12%. Yes, they had to start raising rates. But they never really raised rates far enough to kill the previous inflation. And again, I like to clarify, and I've done it many times here on this channel, that classically or technically, inflation is the creation of currency and credit out of thin air, and that the numbers that are published by the government, CPI, or be it PCE, which is what the Fed looks at, those are just indices of a basket of prices. And they go up and down. Well, usually they only go up. If you look at the CPI index, it's hardly ever gone down in the last 100 years. They go up, as a consequence of the increasing amount of currency and credit that's created out of thin air by the central bank, by commercial banks, by governments borrowing trillions out of thin air as well. Of course, under a sound money system, that wouldn't happen. Credit would be issued with gold backing. You'd have to earn money or gold to be able to give out credit. So what I'm trying to say here is they confuse everyone with CPI. They call it inflation. When CPI, let's say the index, the annual growth drops from like 3% to 2.5, they say, oh, inflation has dropped. It confuses everyone. It doesn't confuse me, and hopefully it doesn't confuse many of you. And what happens is that the price index just keeps rising and rising. The purchasing power of your dollar keeps dropping. And it's really funny because Jay Powell said something that didn't impress Rudy Havenstein, who I follow on X. Of course, Rudy von Havenstein, he was the president of the Reichsbank during the famous German hyperinflation of 1923. And he says, and look what he says here, oh my God. And Powell apparently said yesterday, your grocery bill is about past inflation. And you can see what he said to Jay Powell here. I'm not going to say it out loud, of course. And as I said earlier, the CPI always goes up. So going back to what I was trying to say, these central bankers, they never raise rates far enough to, let's say, destroy the past credit boom, inflationary boom, because they need to keep going in the fiat currency system. In an ideal world, what used to happen under, let's say, an organic gold standard in the 19th century is that, yes, you'd have a boom, credit boom, but then it would bust right back to where it started from. And I've looked at the CPI numbers from the Bank of England going back like in the 19th century. It used to be very volatile, but do you know what? On a whole, from like 1820 to 1914, the CPI went down 0.1 a year for those almost 100 years. And the British pound, which was basically as good as gold, held its purchasing power. But nowadays, under a fiat currency system, it's got to keep going up. So that's what Jay Powell was trying to say. And that's why, as well, the Fed's having problems with the stagflation. And someone noted here on X, and Eric Young, my friend King Kong, posted, he said, yup, the stag is here. And he attached it to a comment 11 months ago when someone asked Jay Powell about stagflation, and he said, I'm not seeing any stag or any inflation. So why has this changed now? Because the Fed has updated its forecasts for economic growth lower. It's upgraded its forecast for their PCE, which is their measure of inflation or prices. They've updated it higher. So, and they've updated unemployment also to go higher than they previously thought. So we've got a slowdown in the economy, persistent CPI or PCE or inflation, which is above 3.5, approaching 4%. And at the same time, what they've done, which is going to make it even worse, this stagflation, in my opinion, is that Jay Powell has significantly reduced the amount of quantitative tightening or the runoff of its balance sheet from 25 billion treasuries a month to 5 billion as of the 1st of April. So basically, they're almost back to no QT, and you can bet they're going to start doing QE again. The other thing that he blamed inflation on, and I'm not sure if he's ignorant of the classical definition, but I suspect he is. He's not a trained economist. He's been brainwashed by the Keynesians, by Wall Street. He said the following. Jerome Powell, chairman, has attributed inflation to tariffs. And Charles Downs here on X says, even though significant tariffs are not scheduled to take effect until April 2nd. So you can see that it's all BS from the Fed. They want to keep you blind to the fact that your dollar, your pound, or your euro in your pocket is going to continue to lose value. And that's why, like in the 70s, the place to be is and is already showing to be precious metals, gold and silver. The miners are starting to catch up, and also the general commodities like copper and others. So we're going to look at some charts now that show me that this is so. And we're going to get to the JFK files in a second. But before I look at the charts, just wanted to show you this post here on X. because guess what? Powell said that inflation will be transitory again. Do you remember a few years ago he said it would be transitory and it was anything but? So I thought that was funny here. Let's look at silver versus the S&P, because silver has been kind of frustrating with what's going on in gold. But as you can see, I spoke about this chart a week or so ago, and we've actually definitively gone through the top of the falling wedge, and also we've gone above the long-term trend line. So it's looking good. That means the price of silver is starting to outperform the S&P. And there's a lot of room on the upside. Is 10x at least potentially for silver to outperform S&P. Here we got the Dow Gold, which I really like to look at. That's breaking down. The Dow is breaking down versus gold, of course. We are at almost 5-year lows. And eventually, I think that will go 1-to-1. I'm not saying it's going to be this year, but in the next few years, I see that happening. What's next? Well, we got copper here next. And copper is virtually breaking out to new highs. It's above $5. That's high-grade copper. And now quickly to gold. I mean, this chart, I've talked about it many times. And these are all monthly. Why do I look at the monthly? Because I personally am not trading short-term, day-to-day, day trading. I'm holding on for the medium to long term. And this chart is one of the most bullish charts I've ever seen. If someone showed me that and didn't say what it was, I'd say, wow, this is bullish. And then we'll look at the GDXJ, which is the Junior Miners ETF. Again, it's monthly. And we're reaching here, 4-year highs. And the key level above is going to be 65.5. Yes, there's going to be ups and downs on a daily basis, hourly basis, but I think the long-term picture looks really good. We formed a good base, and there's still a lot of room to catch up on the upside. And again, the junior miners are a lot more volatile and riskier than the GDX, which we're going to look at here. And the GDX, that's almost breaking out here. Looks like this 45, 46 level is very important. And we're not that far actually from where we were in 2011, even though gold at the time was like $1,900 and now it's over 3,000. So I see the GDX blowing through that 2011 high eventually. And one other thing about ETFs, GDX, GDXJ, something that I've done in the past, if you don't want to buy the ETF, I recommend you look at the prospectus, and they give you a list of what securities or companies they hold, and pick from those. You don't have to pick all of them. I used to pick one that was the biggest, one that was in the middle, and one that was the smallest. You have to do your own thinking. That's what I'm trying to say. So there you go. Jay Powell and the central bankers are going to deny as long as possible that there's no stagflation, but we know there is, and even President Trump called for rate cuts yesterday, so it's not going to be pretty, I think, in terms of the currency. So JFK files, well, it's not a topic I cover too much here. I try to focus on the money and how we can protect ourselves financially. But ever since I was a teenager, I've been interested in history and digging through the surface and looking at things in a contrarian way and asking questions. And I think what triggered that was when I was at the Escola Americana in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where I grew up. I was born in Brazil, the American school in Rio. And I was a junior, I think, or even maybe senior in high school. and it was a history class, and we had to pick a topic for a small research paper. And I picked Pearl Harbor, the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor, and we had a really good library at our school. So I picked out a few books, and I picked out one particular book. I don't remember what it was called. And I read that book, and I was shocked about what I read there. Basically saying that FDR, the U.S. government, knew the Japanese were planning some kind of attack, but they kind of let it happen. And I thought, well, maybe this was incompetence, but it's always stayed in my mind. And it's probably one of the reasons why I don't really trust government. And it's weird because that book in that library, I was probably the only person who took that book out ever, and I actually read it and saw that. Maybe they didn't expect people to look into those things, but that's the way I am. So the JFK files is very interesting and of interest to me ever since I was a teenager or young. I've read many books about JFK and the assassination. There's always been doubt, right? The magic bullet, Lee Harvey Oswald. It was really, there's a lot of questions, of course. But one thing that seems to be coming out of these files is that the intelligence services, not just in the U.S., but other countries, and that's really a sensitive topic, right? It's a country that starts with an I. It's not, I can tell you, it's not Italy, Iran, or Iraq, right? You make your own decision, but yeah, what's coming out of there is that the intelligence agencies were heavily involved, and it's not surprising. And this is where we come to this book by Christopher Story, and it's called The New Underworld Order: Triumph of Criminalism, Dark Actors Playing Games. So who is Christopher Story? Well, there used to be a Wikipedia entry for him, but that's gone. So I found something on ChatGPT, and I met Christopher Story. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2010. He was an advisor, economic advisor to Margaret Thatcher when she was a prime minister. This is what ChatGPT says, though. Christopher Edward Harl Story, 1938 to 2010, was a British writer, publisher, and conspiracy theorist. There you go. He was known for his work on intelligence, espionage, and global financial affairs. Story was the editor of the International Currency Review. So there you go. That's interesting as well. And other economic and geopolitical publications. He was an outspoken critic of corruption in international banking and government operations, often promoting theories about hidden financial schemes and political conspiracies. Well, we're seeing now that they weren't conspiracies, they're fact. We're seeing now with USAID, right? We're seeing now in the JFK files. He worked closely with Soviet defector Anatoly Golitsyn and supported theories about long-term communist deception strategies. His writings often accuse Western and global elites of engaging in financial and political manipulation. While some of his work was considered insightful with certain intelligence circles, others dismissed it as conspiracy-driven. So there you go. Yeah, I met him because he used to keep a blog, worldreports.org. It was a really good report. It came out almost daily. He actually, I remember in 2007, in the summer of 2007, he said the financial system is on its way down. He kind of predicted right before everything collapsed in 2007, 2008, 2009. Yeah, I met him once. I had a chat with him in his office in central London. And guess what? I think he went to Eton, or he was at university with Lord Rothschild, which I found interesting. So one thing he told me, or he wrote about, is that the system we have is synarchy, which is basically the rule by the oligarchy, secret rule by intelligence actors, and that's what we have. And I think that's what the JFK files is pointing to. But let's see what they say here at the back of the book. I'll read it for you, and then I'll show you where you can buy the book. You won't be impressed by the price, though. I didn't pay as much as it is now, luckily. So the new underworld order is a world in which official criminality driven by bribery and corruption is the norm among all layers of governance. At the vast intergovernmental level, the rule of law does not apply. A state of affairs which is exploited to the full under cover of a facade of hypocritical official rectitude. But at the country level, it is ruthlessly relied upon by corrupt intelligence cadres when it suits their interest, equally ruthlessly flouted by operatives and officials most of the time, on the cynical basis that everyone is going to do it. In particular, everyone is engaged in perpetrating crimes against humanity in the form of drug trafficking operations, which are controlled by the competing and simultaneously collaborating intelligence services of the great powers in order to finance their corrupt operations and to sustain the corrosive and subversive global hegemony activities of the Illuminati, of which intelligence communities form, wittingly or unwittingly, the backbone, as they consist essentially of esoteric secret societies. This study then is about the rampant global corruption in high places arising from the freewheeling, unrestrained abominations of the system of synarchy ruled by secret societies. So there you go. I'm going to stop right here. I'm actually going to put a picture of this right here. Right now, you can pause the video and read through it. So I've looked through Google, I searched, and you can get this book at abebooks.co.uk. You might be able to get it in the US as well. Unfortunately, someone wants £752.68 for it. There's one copy there. You might have to search elsewhere. Mine is not for sale, of course. But there you go. That's what we're seeing with the JFK files. I've noticed the mainstream press is not really covering it, not surprising. So yeah, with that, I'm going to wish you all a very good day. Take care. Bye.